Welcome to Stellar Sisters, the podcast where cosmic wisdom meets soul-enriching conversation.
We explore astrology, human design, and the unique blueprint of your soul, helping you understand yourself on a deeper level.
Consider this your permission slip to embrace the magic of being authentically you.
Let's begin. Hi, and welcome back to Stellar Sisters podcast. We're your hosts, Sydney and Chanel. And today we're going to talk about Uranus entering Gemini and what that means. Uranus being in Gemini, what Uranus is all about, how this is affecting us individually and collectively. Chanel's going to run you through everything you need to know. We're going to do horoscopes. Did I miss anything, Chanel?
That's it. That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm also going to get into the gate that Uranus just moved into and a little bit about what that means. So we're excited to get into all of it. Uh, Chanel, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a major shift and a major transit that is just beginning. So there is a lot to cover. Um, we're going to talk about really what Uranus signifies and what Uranus transits bring, what Uranus in Gemini means, and how it is a very different energy from the past 7 years when we've had Uranus in Taurus, and really how Uranus entering Gemini is this next step in helping usher in this new age of air that we're entering, which is in brand new kind of 200-year cycle that we're in astrologically. So this is a big one. This is a big deal. I feel like I've said that a lot in 2025, but that's because 2025 is just such a huge year astrologically. You know, we just had Uranus move into Gemini. We've had Saturn and Neptune move into Aries. We've had Pluto move into Aquarius. Those are four major outer planets that are all changing signs. So the energy of 2025 is just so big and represents such a shift, really. And I think that when we look back at this time in history, we'll really feel that. And I mean, I think we feel that already with
Yeah.
everything that's going on in the world. We can kind of feel we're maybe on this precipice of something new. So we're really going to dive into that.
And just so
Um,
you guys know, like these outer planets are so slow moving. And like Chanel said, this is such a shift because this doesn't happen every year. Like we're bringing this
right.
up because like it hasn't happened in so long that all of these planets are all making these huge shifts into different signs at the same time in the same year is just insane. Like it's
Yes.
huge. It's big energy.
Yes. Major. Yeah. Um, Yeah. So the dates of Uranus and Gemini. So let's rewind. So Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. So for the past 7 years, Uranus has been in Taurus. Now it just ingressed into Gemini on July 7th, and it will be there until November 7th of this year. And then on November 7th, it does retrograde back into Taurus until April 26th of 2026, where it will ingress back into Gemini, and it is staying in Gemini until May of 2033.
Wow.
So this is just the beginning of a longer 7 year stay of Uranus being in Gemini. So this shift from Uranus in Taurus to Uranus in Gemini is huge. Um, Uranus in Taurus, you know, Taurus is a fixed sign. Taurus is stubborn. Taurus likes stability, predictability. Taurus, out of all of the fixed signs, I think Taurus is the sign that likes change and disruption the least, which Uranus is the planet of change and disruption.
Yeah.
And so Uranus moving from Taurus to Gemini, Gemini is an mutable sign, it's an air sign, and mutable signs love change. I think out of all of the air signs, Gemini is the sign that likes change and variety the most. So
Mm.
it is such a huge shift in energy to go from Uranus and Taurus to Uranus and Gemini. Taurus is grounded, stable, predictable. Gemini is flighty, fast, curious, adaptable. Um, and Uranus going from this fixed Taurus sign to this lover of change, adaptability, variety, Gemini is just like such a major energy shift. So
Mhm.
let's back up for a moment and just talk about Uranus in general. So a few keywords for Uranus transits are disruption, change, freedom, revolution, rebellion. I really love the word breakthrough for Uranus transits because Uranus is the disruptor of the status quo and offers us opportunities for breakthroughs in whatever area of life it's transiting.
Mm.
Um, it is also the planet of eccentricity. So Uranus is a little weird, it's a little quirky. I always explain Uranus, Uranus is the planet that rotates this way, vertically instead
Yeah.
of horizontally. Is that the right descriptors? I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Yes.
can't remember high school, like,
I think it's on like a slight tilt or something, right? Like it's on a
yeah.
weird.
So Uranus is the only planet that rotates the opposite kind
Yeah.
of way that all
Yeah.
of the other planets do. And so Uranus isn't afraid to be different. It's not afraid to be weird. It's not afraid to march to the beat of its own drum.
Mm.
Um, Not afraid to stand out. So really, Uranus helps us break free of old patterns and habits, get out of our comfort zone, disrupt our status quo. Um, it can help us um, innovate in different parts of our lives. It's almost like getting a software upgrade. So we're getting rid of the old operating system and upgrading to
Mm.
something brand new. Um,
I love that analogy.
yeah,
That's so helpful.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, it can also be the planet of surprise because with Uranus transits, you really need to expect the unexpected. um, because something could come from totally out of left field that you never saw happening, that you never saw coming. And this Uranus transit hits your chart, and you're like, whoa, I couldn't have predicted that this particular thing would happen.
Mm.
Um, and it's
Wow.
the planet that represents innovation, kind of similar to what I was talking about, the software upgrade. What is the next thing? What is the next evolution of whatever it is we're talking about?
Mm.
Um, yeah, so Uranus transits are all about change, really, and freedom and breakthroughs, independence. Um, and so when we're experiencing a Uranus transit, it can feel very disruptive to our lives, and it can maybe stimulate your nervous system and make you feel anxious, and that's very Uranian, this Uranian energy. But Uranus transits are here to break you out of your comfort zone, break out of the norm, and have this kind of level up, this software upgrade into this new paradigm, this new level of being, thinking, relating, operating in the world. And so I think it's really helpful to know the dates of Uranus and Taurus. I think it's really helpful to know if you are a Gemini specifically, or if you are a mutable sign, Gemini, Pisces, Virgo, or Sagittarius, when this transit is exactly activating your chart. So say you're a Gemini sun, at 15 degrees Gemini, this transit that's halfway through Gemini, right? So this transit will probably go active for you about 3.5 years into the transit. You can always get an astrology consultation to kind of figure out when that energy will be most felt and most active for you. Um, because what's helpful is knowing the timing. Because
Mhm.
when you're experiencing these transits, it might feel like this energy is here forever. This energy is here to stay. How am I going to get through this? How am I going to cope with this? And to know the timing of that, is really, really helpful, and to better understand how it's activating your chart and your life, can be really helpful. And now also I do want to say, when I talk to people with Uranus transits and I'm talking about change and breaking out of your comfort zone, people's minds always go to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
They always think, oh my God, my life is going to fall apart. This awful thing is going to happen to me. And when I say that, that doesn't always mean something negative and something bad is going to happen. I know someone who was a Taurus sun. When Uranus went over her sun, she met her husband and had kind of this whirlwind romance and ended up getting married very quickly. And it was just like something that she didn't see coming,
Or
and
Chanel,
with
you
this,
had a baby with Uranus
yeah,
in your fifth
yeah.
house.
Uranus in Taurus, that was my fifth house. And when that was really activated, I got pregnant, and I had my son. So it doesn't always mean bad things, It sounds scary. Change is always scary. Yes, I know that. But it doesn't always have to be something negative or something bad. So I do just want to give that
Yeah.
that disclaimer there too. But it can feel very exciting and very thrilling and very um, rejuvenating almost with Uranus transits. Um, Yeah, so like I was saying before, it's a huge shift from Uranus and Taurus going to Uranus and Gemini. You know, Taurus is a fixed earth sign, Gemini is a mutable air sign. So, like, I'm thinking of Taurus as like this big, huge fixed boulder that is like immovable. Whereas Gemini is like a tree with branches that sway and move and adapt and flex with the wind very easily, with the
Mhm.
even slightest breeze, whereas a boulder doesn't move with the wind, you know?
Mhm.
And so when Uranus was in Taurus, it's like taking a lot for that Taurus energy to move.
Mhm.
Whereas when Uranus is in Gemini, Gemini is very movable and very adaptable, anyways. So when Uranus enters this Gemini, it feels a lot more chaotic, almost, a
Mhm.
lot more movable energy, faster moving energy, more fast paced.
I'm
It's
thinking
this
of like a
air
tornado
sign.
coming through and like moving so many things quickly all at once and just like going right through and then it's gone, just like super quick. That's what I'm
Yeah,
picturing while you're talking.
yeah, that's exactly like the imagery that I'm trying to kind of conjure up here. Um, it's just such a different Uranian energy, especially because Gemini is a mutable sign. Um, and Gemini is like the jack of all trades, master of none. They want to have their hand in lots of different pots. And
Hmm.
so it's like, oh, I'm going to disrupt this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go there. And it's just kind of like a little bit of chaotic energy with Uranus and
Yeah.
Gemini, because these two planets, or these two, Uranus and Gemini, when they come together, they both kind of almost have like um, an energy that isn't directed or focused, solely on one thing. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So
Yes.
it's a huge shift of energy. Um, and when Uranus was in Taurus since 2018, Taurus represents our material possessions, money, wealth, food, land, earth, what makes us feel safe and secure. And when Uranus went through Taurus, that real estate market was insane. It was up and down and all around. And that's very indicative, I think, of the Uranus and Taurus transit.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
if you think of all of the supply chain disruptions that we had with Uranus and Taurus, Taurus representing, goods and material things. I mean, I think we all remember in 2020 shelves being completely empty,
Yeah.
going to the grocery store. There was that huge truck driver strike. I think it was the beginning of 2022, which caused huge disruptions to um, the supply chain and us
Hmm.
getting the goods and services on the shelves. Um, there was this major like shift of people fleeing very urban areas and going to the suburbs and reconnecting with the land, which is like Taurus, the land.
Hmm.
And kind of this resurgence of like baking and cooking and homesteading and all of
Oh
this
yeah,
like
like sourdough starters.
yeah, like how big the whole sourdough thing was in
Yeah.
2020, which is a very Tauran thing related to food, and gardening and all of that kind of stuff. Like that has had such a major resurgence since
Yeah.
Uranus went into Taurus. So those are just some of my kind of reflections on Uranus and Taurus and how Uranus really disrupted those Taurus themes in the past
Hmm.
7 years. I know Uranus is moving into Gemini, and Gemini is an air sign that represents language and communication, transportation, travel, and education. So I do expect major changes and breakthroughs and upgrades in all of those arenas. And it feels like going from driving your car to um, self-driving cars or flying cars.
Hmm.
It feels like going from writing things yourself to using ChatGPT or AI to write for you. Um, you know, I think the mail system is very Gemini and Mercurial. So I feel like we'll see more like drones dropping off packages and mails and upgrades to um, the truck drivers and the mail drivers and
Mm.
things like that is what I'm like
Fascinating.
getting with Uranus and Gemini.
Yeah.
I also think this could be pretty major changes or upheavals to learning and education. Um,
Mm.
and I think that has a lot to do with surging technology and AI and things like that, obviously.
Wow.
Um, so I am like curious to see kind of how some of those systems get shaken up by this Uranus and Gemini transit.
Hmm.
I mean, I think we're already seeing it, right? Like ChatGPT is really having an explosion currently, I think, like everybody's using ChatGPT. You
Yeah.
don't really have to like write anything yourself anymore, which is very Uranus and Gemini. I mean, of course, there are drawbacks to that,
Yeah.
that's not all positive. Um, so I think these are things we have to be very mindful of how we're using them.
Hmm.
Um, but it's very indicative to me of this kind of new age of air that we're stepping into.
Hmm.
Um,
Just making things even faster.
mhm,
I have played around with ChatGPT and it a lot of times takes my voice out of it or like writes words in a weird way and I'm just like I wouldn't say that, but it is so helpful to like bounce ideas off of or like help me see a different perspective on things.
mhm.
And it's just a quicker way of doing things, a quicker way to brainstorm or I don't know, just have a new idea that comes in that then you can run with. So it's making things faster.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using ChatGPT like Google because it's so much quicker
Right.
than Google. Because with Google, you
Yes.
still have to search through all of the links, and maybe you click on one link and they have a little bit of information. You click on the next one and there's another piece.
Yeah.
But when you can put it into ChatGPT and ask a question, they synthesize all of that information for you in a
Yeah.
second.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was like, what is the best, you know, toddler table and chairs that for my son that he'll be able to grow into? Can you compare ones, by price or by
I
function?
just did that too with lunch boxes for my daughter because she's gonna start preschool and that there's so many out there and I know that like I'm gonna get one and then I'll figure out like the couple things that's not perfect about it and I want to try a different one. And you can ask different people, but they all have different opinions because their kids are all different. So I was like, ChatGPT, what's the best school lunchbox for a preschooler, and it like
Yeah,
listed like the top five and like why and the reviews and yeah, it's such a good search engine.
yes. And that is really helpful. But one of, I think, the drawbacks to that and to this like age of air that we're entering is information overload. Like, when
Yeah.
is all of this information too much information?
Mm,
When is
yeah.
having all of this information actually, you know, hindering us in making a decision versus just making that decision, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that that is something to be cognizant of as we enter into this age of air and age of communication, or yeah, age of communication. And, even now with like the news, it's like there are so many different news sources and so many different opinions. And it's overwhelming,
Yeah.
It's like, what do you believe and who do you believe? And can be so easily influenced one way or another.
And
And
what was a random news story that someone just created an AI image and an AI title and it's like completely false, you know,
right,
and
yeah,
discerning the difference between them.
yes, exactly. And I think that's also very Saturn Neptune, with Neptune kind of distorting our reality of Saturn, and these
Yeah.
are all playing into each other and they're all
Yeah.
connected. Um, And it's such a new era that we're stepping into that we don't necessarily have those um, structures, and we don't have the laws and the regulations yet,
Yeah.
built for these things.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just, it's, it's interesting this because we're really entering this brand new space. And it's fascinating that we're kind of living through it, you know, we're living through this changeover. And so let's maybe get into this a little bit. So, this new age of air that I'm talking about. So, um, Saturn and Jupiter, they meet up every 20 years in astrology. And for the past 200 years, since, 1800s, Saturn and Jupiter have been meeting up in earth signs. So, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And now they are starting to meet up in air signs for the next 200 years. So we just had the Saturn Jupiter conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius on December 21st of 2020. So that was the first air sign conjunction between those two planets. And now they will only meet in air signs for the next 200 years. So until
Wow.
the 2200s, which
Wow.
is insane to even think about.
Yeah.
So we're leaving this age of Earth, which correlated with the Industrial Revolution, really with the rise of capitalism and banking, with using fossil fuels, really digging into Earth's resources and building material things and material wealth with this age of Earth that we've been in. Now we're entering into this age of air. And we actually did have um, one prior to this Aquarius meetup. So they met up in Libra in 1981. And then in 2000, they went back to Earth and they met up in Taurus. So that was kind of like they retrograded into air and then back into Earth. And now with this Aquarius one, they're only going to meet up in air signs for the next 20 years or 200 years.
Wow.
So when they met up in Libra in 1981, the result of that was the internet was born. The internet was created. And so that was kind of like the very beginning of this air age. And now, actually, December 21st, 2020, they met up at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And that day, that very day that they had the conjunction, was the day that the COVID vaccine was approved by the FDA for use, which to me, it feels like a very new, innovative technology
Yes.
that was then born on that day.
Yeah.
I know that the vaccine wasn't created on that day, but that was a significant day that it was approved for use.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's just, I can't overstate how, like, how big of a deal it is that we're now moving into this next 200-year age of air. And Uranus moving into Gemini, an air sign this year, and Pluto, this year moved into Aquarius, another air sign for good this year. So Pluto had been in Capricorn since 2008, which is an earth sign, and Uranus had been in Taurus since 2018, which is an earth sign. Pisces just moved into Aries, or Saturn just moved into Aries from Pisces, which is a water sign. Neptune had been in Pisces, which was a water sign, for the past 14 years. So all of these major outer planets are moving into air and fire signs from these water and earth signs. And so, water and earth are feminine signs. They're much more receptive, introspective. And this fire and air is much more masculine. It's much more fast paced, quicker moving. Let's take action. Let's make things happen. So it's just such a huge vibe shift.
Yeah, such a huge vibe shift. Wow.
And with Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus now in Gemini, they're trining each other. And the trine aspect is a very flowy, harmonious aspect. And so they're only going to be helping each other advance and accelerate at an even kind of quicker pace. That Pluto in Aquarius is a total transformation around technology. I think this is representative of major social upheaval and collective power and social change. And it's kind of sending out this beam of support to Uranus and Gemini, which is the revolution in the way we communicate, think, learn, travel. I just think this is going to be a time of major, major social and technological transformation. And maybe you don't need astrology to tell you that, but it's just very confirming and validating, and I think helpful to know that we're stepping into this kind of new time, this new generation. And I'm so curious to see what the babies being born at this time, like what their generation is going to do in the world.
Me too. With those, yes, it's just going to be so interesting to see what they end up doing.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy how, we grew up in a time where we didn't have smartphones, we didn't even have a phone yet in our childhood. We had a computer that you maybe used to use Word or play some games, but it's just insane where we are now. Or like even our parents, what they've seen in their lifetime from having like a black and white TV and a landline phone to now my mom uses ChatGPT to look up her ailments. I'm Like it's just insane. And now to see where we're going to be, moving forward, it's a crazy time that we live in.
Yeah. It just it really is wild that we are kind of living through this change of the ages, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy that we're born during this time and living through it.
Yeah.
It's just I think the next, 7 years with Uranus and Gemini is going to be very interesting. Um, Also because I think we should talk about the elephant in the room, which is Uranus and Gemini and how that relates to the US.
Yeah.
Um,
This is
because
fascinating to me. I can't wait for you to get into it.
yeah, so the US, um, the United States has a birth chart. The United States has the
Yeah.
natal chart on the day that it was founded. Um, and it has Uranus and Gemini. Um, so the US was founded when Uranus was in Gemini. And Uranus takes 84 years to go around all of the signs of the zodiac. So every 84 years, the US has had a Uranus return.
Hmm.
And each Uranus return that the US has had has correlated with the US being involved in a major war. So, the first time was the Revolutionary War. The second time was the Civil War. The third time was World War II, I believe.
Yep. Hmm.
And now we're coming up on the next 84-year cycle.
Yeah.
And that's scary to think about. Um, but I think it's important to know. I think
Yeah.
it's important to keep in mind of what we're dealing with here. And I'm not an expert on this topic, but it is just such a buzz in the astrological community for obvious reasons, because that has major implications for everybody in the entire world. Um, but if you are interested in learning more about that, Chris Brennan, who does the astrology podcast, just put out a whole episode on Uranus and Gemini and how that correlates to the US and wars. That is fascinating. And his podcast in general is just amazing and so insightful. And I'll
He
be
goes
listening to that.
so in detail.
Yeah, I mean,
He
I think
has
he
got
has
to have a
released.
one in his profile, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I totally think so. We need to look that up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, he has released 8-hour long podcast episodes.
Yeah. And they're so good. Like they're so detailed. You learn
Yeah,
so much from them.
yeah, they're
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's a little note on Uranus and Gemini and how it correlates to the US. But I think in general, in kind of the collective and individual level, Uranus and Gemini, it has a very thrilling, exciting energy to it. But I do think, like we were talking about before, there does need to be like maybe some precautions and some warnings around this because it is so new. And we haven't really had a chance to put any boundaries, on these new things yet. Um,
Hmm.
and I do think that when Gemini is activated over the next 7 years, when Uranus is in Taurus, for example, when the eclipses start hitting in Gemini, which I believe is in, let's see, they might start in 2029, 2030. And then also Saturn will move into Gemini in 2030 and 2031.
Wow.
Those are going to be very, very pivotal times when we really see that Uranian energy in Gemini come out. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, so that will be very interesting.
Yeah, wow. So you could be seeing certain little hints of themes starting to show up now. It's not meaning like Uranus just went in here. So these things might not be fully coming to fruition at this time, but it could take an eclipse there or Saturn moving in there to really see what this is about for you. And then it can even sometimes take it moving out of Gemini to be like, oh, yeah, that's what that meant for me at that time in my life. So you might start getting little hints of what this is going to mean for you, but then it's really going to show itself kind of towards the end of that time period when these other things are happening there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's a lot going
Yeah.
on.
So much.
But I am very curious to know what gate Uranus in Gemini is entering.
Yeah. So I'm
I'm
just
not
going to
sure.
actually talk about one gate, um, gate 20, which was activated when Gemini or when Uranus went into Gemini. And it's going to be here until November 4th, 2025. And then it's going to retrograde back into Taurus. And then it's going to go back into gate 20 again on April 28th. And it'll be there for about a year. So it'll be in gate 20 until May 26th of 2027. So, this energy is going to be here for a while. And one thing before I get into gate 20, I think this is so fascinating. All but one of the six Gemini gates are in the throat center. Um, did I say Uranus or Gemini? If I said Uranus, I meant Gemini gates. How Uranian. But all of the Gemini gates in human design are in the throat center. So all about communication, expression, how we manifest in the world. So I find that really fascinating. Like we are with Uranus going through Gemini over the next 7 years, we're going to be spending a lot of time in the throat center in human design. Um, so gate 20 is called the gate of the now. And it's all about sharing your truth, sharing your authenticity in the present moment. Um, so this gate is about intuitive, responsive action, to really discern and say what is needed in the present. So with Uranus here, it's like this long-term invitation to like stop rehearsing what you want to do in life and actually start living it, actually start doing the things. Um, it's Uranus will challenge us to stop outsourcing our authority to time, strategy, or planning, and instead kind of drop into what's alive, what's available in the moment. So it really is about like, what do I want to do now? Like, what's truthful for me? What's authentic to me? What has been holding me back that like what fears have been holding me back, keeping me from doing this? Like let people think what they want to think. Like I'm going to step into the present moment and do what I want to do. Like are you willing to express your truth in real time even if it shakes things up, for other people?
Yeah.
So that is the main energy. The time is really now. And like, if not now, when? It's really gonna push us to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense with the Uranus energy because
Yeah.
Uranus is pushing you out of your comfort zone. Uranus and Gemini is not a planet that waits.
Right.
It's not a planet that takes pause. It's a
Yeah.
planet that is very quick moving and fast and, action oriented. Um, and if anything, it's getting that supportive sextile from Saturn, encouraging you to break out of your comfort zone to make those changes.
Yeah.
Um, so it just makes total sense.
Yeah.
All right. Um, well, should we talk about some horoscopes with Uranus and Gemini.
Yeah, let's go through those.
Okay. I do kind of want to preface these by saying, if you are going through a Uranus transit, um, it can feel very disruptive. Like I was saying earlier, it can really activate your nervous system. It can really be um, a time where you feel destabilized. And especially in Gemini, where it's like Gemini even amplifies some of that like scattered energy. So if you
Mm.
are, a mutable sign, if you are really being activated by a Uranus transit, um, it can be a very good time to really break out of your comfort zone and do something new and try something new. But it can also make you feel maybe a little bit restless, a little bit, um, like you lost your footing, you're not quite grounded. And so it can be just nice to keep that in mind to know if you are feeling that way, make sure you have tools or supports or people in your life that can maybe help you feel a little bit grounded during that time. Um, but the main thing with Uranus transits is to embrace change as much as possible. Because the more that you dig your heels in and the more that you want to cling to what you know and cling to how something has always been done, the greater the friction is going to be with this change that Uranus wants to bring in your life. And
Mm.
the more that you are open to change and embrace change, the more flow and ease that you will have with Uranus coming into your life and that energy coming into your life. And generally, mutable signs are very good with change, because they are the sign that represents, one season ending and the next coming in. And so they are the signs um, that really have that element of change within them. Um, so I do think this is going to be very, a little bit easier, maybe for the fixed signs who have just gone through Uranus and Taurus.
I hope so, because that was rough. Well, there was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the fixed signs are really, it's harder for them to embrace change.
Yeah.
Um, so hopefully that's a little bit maybe a little bit easier for the mutables. Um, and with so really, yeah, we just had Uranus and Taurus. Prior to that was Uranus and Aries. Um, and just a couple of stories from my life with Uranus transit. So obviously, we talked about Uranus being in Taurus, which is my fifth house, which is children and pregnancy. And I got pregnant and had a baby. And that Uranus in transit was really activated by Jupiter entering Taurus too, in my fifth house. And that is when I got pregnant and had my son. So you can see how kind of other planets coming in can really
Yeah.
activate that planet moving through too.
Hmm.
Um, when Uranus was in Aries, that was my fourth house of home and family. And I think I moved 7 times when Uranus was
Oh
going
my
through my
gosh.
house of home and family because I had just graduated college. I moved back home. Then I got an apartment. Then I moved back home again. Then I got another apartment. And then I moved into the house that I'm living now. So maybe that's only 5 times, but moving five
That's a
times in
lot.
7 is a lot, you
Yeah.
know? So that kind of represents that Uranian energy in my fourth house. Um, and also with that as well, both my grandparents did pass away when Uranus was in my fourth house. Um, which was major changes to
Yeah.
obviously family
Hmm.
dynamic. That's not to
Wow.
say that if you have Uranus moving through your fourth house that someone's going to pass away. That's not what I'm implying, that has to mean that, but it did mean major shifts in my family. And
Yeah.
also my mom is also a Capricorn rising, which means that Uranus in Aries was going through her fourth house as well, which was
Wow,
her parents, you know.
that's really powerful. Give me
Yeah,
chills.
yeah. And then prior to that, when Uranus was in Pisces in my third house, um, that was really when I was learning a new language. I took up French. You know, the third house is the house of communication and the mind and learning. And I was in college, and for my major, I didn't even have to take a foreign language. Like it wasn't required. Like for some majors, it was required to take it, but for me, it wasn't. But I just wanted to. And so I started taking French classes. You know, I went and studied abroad. Obviously, that's where Sydney and I met. And I mean,
Mm.
while living in France, I became pretty fluent in French when Uranus was transiting through my third house, um, which I'm not fluent anymore. It's been so long since I've been there. I'm so mad about that, I wish I could still speak like I did, but it was such a revolution in my communication.
Yeah, wow.
So those are just some reflections, on previous Uranus
Yeah, I
trans.
love that. I love hearing all of that. I have a good example with Uranus moving through Taurus in my eighth house, the previous one. Just so much happened. I bought well, why don't you tell people what the eighth house means
So the
really
eighth
quickly?
house is, the house of money in terms of debts, taxes, loans, mortgages, inheritances. It can represent your partner's money and income as well.
Yeah,
Um,
so
you know, yeah,
and can have death, right?
yes, death,
Yeah.
uh, and like rebirth kind of thing. It's the eighth
Yeah.
house. Yeah.
Yeah. So over that time, we bought a house. And when you were talking about the housing market, it just boomed so much. We bought a house and flipped it for like so much money for how much money my parents flipped their house for after 25 years of living in it. It was like we made the same amount of money in 2 years of living there from 2020 to 2022 and then bought a second house. So like that theme going on. And then my
Crazy.
husband, what?
That's just crazy.
Yeah, I know. And then my husband got a new job that's pretty it's just a higher up job that brings us in more money. So like my partner's money was
Hmm.
changing in some way.
Hmm.
And then I lost my last two grandparents that are still alive. And that was just, and the first one wasn't as much of a shock, but the second one, like I mean, he was older, he was 94, but he got cancer and it just happened so quickly. Like within a month, he had passed. And like, of course, I knew he was gonna die someday, but it just happened so fast. And I really wasn't prepared for that. That was like a big shock. And then the year before that, my aunt actually ended up passing of cancer and like had it for a year and then just went. And that was pretty shocking because, she was in her 60s. She wasn't too old yet and she was pretty healthy. Um, so all of those deaths happened like 1 year after another, like one, two, three, and that all happened with Uranus in my eighth house going through Taurus. And as a fixed sign, it's definitely it really shocked me emotionally and really did have an effect on my nervous system, I'd say. Like just trying to move through that, was challenging.
Hmm.
Definitely shifted things for me. But, I did receive money, inheritance, items, physical things from them. So that came from that. And then, of course, moving is an awesome thing and having a bigger house is great, but it also comes with more debt. And we moved into this newer house and we had to immediately get a completely new HVAC because it went bad like the first fall that we lived there. So, moving in and then pouring money into that. And then we had to take down some dead trees in the backyard and just like one thing after another.
Yeah.
That all
Yeah.
happened with Uranus moving through my eighth house.
Yeah. I mean, you hit all of those like eighth house themes there.
Yeah.
And when Uranus was in Aries in your seventh house, you met your husband.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, and I just want to also say about Uranus in Taurus, I have Mars and Jupiter in Taurus. So I do have, some things there. It's not just an empty house.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Uranus was in Aries, I did meet Ben.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I love hearing stories about when planets transited different houses in other people's charts and hearing about what happened because it really helps me contextualize like what
Yeah.
those transits really mean, for
Yeah.
people. So,
Yeah. So if you have
really
a good
helpful.
story, write us, send us a message. We'd love to hear it. We love hearing those stories, how it
Yeah.
manifests.
I remember I was talking to someone who had Uranus and Taurus was transiting through their fourth house, and I was like, "You're going to move this year." Because I think the eclipses were hitting Taurus, and maybe even, yeah, I think it was the eclipses. And I was like, "You're moving." And she was like, "Yeah, okay." Like I was giving her a reading, and she was like, kind of like not sold on the fact that I was telling her that she was going to be moving. And she was like, I don't think so. And then, like a couple of months later, I got an email saying, my landlord is selling the house. We have to move. It was totally unpredicted. Like, I did not see this coming whatsoever. And she ended up going and buying a new house. And I think that really sold astrology for her. I think
Wow.
before that she was maybe a little bit of a skeptic. And then when that transit hit and she was like, yeah, this is real. This is happening.
Yeah.
You did really predict that. Um, and I think that also does really speak to maybe the unpredictability-ness of
Yeah.
Uranus is like something happens that you never saw coming, like
Hmm.
your aunt passing away or having to move when you weren't anticipating it or getting laid off when you weren't expecting it or,
Hmm.
something like that potentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, okay, we'll start with horoscopes for each sign. So, if you're an Aries rising, this is Uranus in the third house. So, the third house is all about communication, mind, learning, travel, kind of like short distance travel, not necessarily long distance travel, and siblings. So with Uranus there, this is a 7-year transit where you're really reinvigorating your mind. Maybe you are taking a new course of study, you are learning something new, you're working on your communication skills. Maybe you are starting to write a book or write more or speak more or doing more kind of like public speaking or teaching in some capacity. But this is really a revolution around, your voice, your mind, communication. Um, and this could also potentially have to do with your siblings as well and have maybe some changing sibling dynamics or relationships, or maybe something happens with your siblings with the Uranus in the third house. For Taurus, this is Uranus entering your second house. So the second house is your money, your possessions, your material items, your what you value, and even has to do with your self-worth as well. So Uranus going into the second house is really a total revolution around the way you make money, the way you relate to um, your surroundings, what you value, your material possessions. This could be, you maybe have always wanted to start your own business, and all of a sudden Uranus goes into Taurus and you're doing it right away. And maybe that was your 10, 20-year plan or something, and you're all of a sudden doing it now. This can be like unexpected shifts in terms of your job or your income. Either way, maybe you're getting laid off, or maybe you're getting a huge promotion that you weren't expecting, or maybe you've been at the same job for 20 years and now all of a sudden you have this new opportunity for this new position. Um, and as a Taurus, you've probably been at that job for the past 20 years because you like stability and predictability. But with Uranus, it's like time to step out of your comfort zone, time to do something new, time to take that leap of faith and try it. So yeah, it's all about money and income really for Taurus. For Gemini, um, this is happening in your first house of self. So if you're a Gemini rising, this is a huge once in a lifetime transit for you. This is really all about your identity, maybe even your physical health and wellness and body. Um, if you're a Gemini rising, like strap in because over the next 7 years, you're going to look back and be like, wow, I am a totally different person than I was 7 years ago. And again, this has never happened before in your life. So this is different than anything else you may have experienced before. But this is really about um, having more independence and freedom to be yourself and who you are. Maybe that's a little bit weird. Maybe that's a little bit quirky. Maybe there's something, um, outside of the status quo or outside of the norm that you are. And it's really your time to embrace that and do that. Break free of old, habits or thoughts about who you were and really embrace a totally new side of yourself. It's a major, major transit for Gemini rising. This could also be kind of like working on your health stuff with Uranus in the first house, maybe you're really focused on your health or wellness too with Uranus in the first house. Cancer rising. This is Uranus in the 12th house. This looks like breakthroughs around mental health for Cancer risings. This can be you have been maybe replaying the same patterns in your subconscious for your whole life. And when Uranus goes in the 12th house, this is your opportunity to break free of some of those things that keep you stuck, that keep you playing small, that keep you in the same old patterns, year after year. Uranus going into your 12th house can maybe expose some of those harder, difficult, more inner psychological workings there, but it's your opportunity to break free of those, which is really, really powerful and beautiful. So that's for Cancer rising. For Leo rising, this is happening in your 11th house of community and friends and social groups. So Leo risings, it feels like there's some sort of, if there's like a social cause or humanitarian cause that you're really passionate about or really into supporting with Uranus going into the 11th house, this can really make you um, you know, a warrior for that. This can really have you step up and step into advocating for those things more. It can also look like your friends changing. Um, you know, I would suggest if there are friends or people or groups in your life that maybe they're just, maybe you've had them for a long time, but they're no longer aligned and it's just not working for you. Let those friendships evolve into something new. You don't necessarily have to let them go, but, maybe there are more or there are different people that are supposed to enter your life at this time and, allow yourself to grow your community and your friends. So that's Leo risings. Virgo risings, this is Uranus entering your 10th house of career. So this is pretty major for Virgo rising since you are another mutable sign. This is a total revolution in terms of your career and professional and public life. Maybe you've been in one field for your whole life, and Uranus enters your 10th house, and you decide to go in a totally different direction. And that's good. Lean into that. Lean into whatever that Uranian energy is taking you towards. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself in terms of your career. Don't be afraid to level up into, the next opportunity, the next thing. Um, but things are changing in terms of career for Virgos, and um, allow that change to happen because it's allowing you greater freedom in your professional life. For Libra risings, this is Uranus transiting through your 9th house. This is the house of religion and spirituality and philosophy. Um, this looks like a total, revolution in terms of your spiritual life. You know, um, maybe you were born and raised in a certain religion, and all of a sudden you are, maybe questioning that, or maybe thinking, wait, what do I believe in? What is my truth? What is my spiritual path? What is my spiritual journey? Really breaking free of old beliefs that maybe no longer suit you in terms of this area of your life. This could also look like international travel or faraway travel. This is really breaking out of your comfort zone. Take a trip. Definitely go abroad. I think Libra risings will be going abroad sometime in the next 7 years. Um, or the 9th house also has to do with higher education. So this is similar to the 3rd house, and that, you could be, um, maybe you could literally be going back to school for, like, higher education, college degree, master's degree, etc. But also kind of learning something new, expanding your mind, even if it's not in a literal way of like going back to college.
I can't wait to plan my international trip.
I know, right? I think we should go to Paris.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, Scorpio risings. This is happening in your 8th house. So, we talked about that and what that meant for Sydney, recently, and I think that's a really great example of that. But this is really all about, finances, again, not like the 2nd house, which is your personal income, but mortgages, debts, taxes, loans, inheritances. Maybe your kind of finances in that way are going up and down. Maybe you unexpectedly get an inheritance that brings in, more money for you. Maybe your partner is going through some sort of financial changes on their end, which fluctuates your money. Maybe you're able to secure a loan for a mortgage. Um, this can also be on a deeper level, more psychological, where you're kind of going through this death and rebirth on more of an inner psychological level, where maybe you're able to break free from some um, inner pain or trauma that you've been experiencing with Uranus in the 8th house. Okay, Sag risings. This is Uranus in your 7th house, which is the house of marriage and partnerships and relationships. Um, this is, a pretty radical change that's happening in your relationships. So, if you're single, this is really radically going to change, your relationship. So I have seen a lot of people meet their partner, get married, get engaged, move in with their partner, something like that with Uranus in the 7th, i.e. Sydney, who met her husband when Uranus was transiting through her 7th house.
And moved in with him and got engaged. And
Hey,
when did it
all
move
of the above.
in? When did it move into Taurus?
It moved into Taurus in 2018. I don't remember the month though. So I don't know if when you got married,
We
it was
got
in.
married April 2018. So I wonder, I'll have to
Right.
go back and look.
I know. I was thinking about that too. Um, if you are married, or, in a partnership already with Uranus and Taurus, this looks like a pretty radical revolution around the way that you relate to each other. Um, so maybe your partner is going through some pretty major changes, and that affects your relationship and how you are with one another. This does not necessarily mean, separation. The only reason I say that is because I know that's where everyone's minds go. But if things really, really aren't working with your partner and Uranus goes into the seventh house, it could look like that. I'm not saying that it could never, but it doesn't have to. It does not necessarily mean that that is actually going to happen. I know many Scorpio risings who just went through this transit and they're still with their partner. But there have been changes in their relationships, and think of it as a software upgrade. Again, your relationship was one way pre this transit, and it will be one way post this transit, and it will be an upgrade, it will be a software upgrade. That doesn't mean that there might not be work and effort that goes into that. But ultimately, I think it will bring you and your partner more freedom and independence in the relationship with Uranus there. Okay, Capricorn risings. This is Uranus in your sixth house. So the sixth house is the house of work and it's the house of health. This looks like pretty major changes on the work front for Capricorn risings. Your daily life is about to really be shaken up and about to go into a different thing. This could look like getting a new job. You know, Maybe you have previously like gone into the office for every job that you've had. Uranus enters the sixth house, and all of a sudden your daily life looks different because you're able to get a remote work from home job. That's just one example that comes to mind there. But your daily habits and routines are really changing, and that could also play into your health. Maybe you are taking care of yourself in a different way. Maybe you are getting into different eating routines, a different exercise routine, the way that you move your body can all change with Uranus going in the sixth house. As a Capricorn rising, I'm looking forward to this because I could really use some changes in terms of my work life. But as a Gemini moon, I'm also a little bit nervous for when Uranus goes on my moon. But I think it will generally, hopefully, be a positive, productive transit for me. If you've been through Uranus in the sixth house, say you're a Sag rising, let me know how that's been for you. Okay, Aquarius rising. This is Uranus in your fifth house. If you are looking to get pregnant and have a baby, this is your time to shine. You could definitely get pregnant during this transit. Again, this doesn't have to mean pregnancy and children, but it can. This looks like a total revolution around your creative life. This is a lot of opportunity for you to really dig into what you love doing, what you love creating, how you like to have fun, how you like to blow off steam and relax. It's kind of really fun and exciting energy for Aquarius risings. This is kind of like a whole new frontier in terms of your creative endeavors that you can really transform and evolve there with the fifth house. Okay, and last but not least, Pisces rising. This is Uranus in your fourth house. So this looks like pretty major changes into your home and family and living situation. This could be you moving, this could be you renovating, this could be, pretty major changes happening with your parents. They could be going through some changes with Uranus in the fourth house. Again, this can be maybe a little bit of a more unstable time in terms of like your home. Again, when this happened to me, I think I moved 5 times in 7 years. So if that, energy is happening for you, it will end, but this is if you're wanting more space in your living situation, this transit can really help you create that in your home. If you are um, wanting to reconnect with family, this transit can help you do that. But this is really changes happening in terms of your home. So that's all 12 signs. That's what I got for you.
Thank you for running through all of those. It's so helpful to hear how it's going to affect you and, in what area of life. I find that so helpful to know and just have awareness around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Me too. All right. Well, that's what we got for Uranus and Gemini. So thanks for listening. Please do let me know if if you have any like crazy Uranus transit stories, because like I said, it's so interesting and helpful to know. And yeah, I appreciate you listening. We really love hearing all of your feedback. If you feel called to, please rate and review us on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube. That would mean the world to us. So
Yeah.
thank you for listening, everybody, and happy Uranus and Gemini.
Bye.
Bye.